West Virginia's rugged mountains and quiet valleys hide more than just natural beauty. They hold stories of ancient mysteries that continue to puzzle locals and visitors alike. From massive burial mounds and strange petroglyphs to eerie cryptid sightings and unexplained encounters, the state is filled with legends that blur the line between history and folklore. Grave Creek Mound. When you stand before the Grave Creek Mound in Moundsville, West Virginia, the first thing that hits you is its size. Rising nearly 70 feet high and spanning almost 300 feet across, it's one of the largest earthen burial mounds in North America. Built by the Adena people more than 2,000 years ago, it makes you pause and wonder how a culture with no metal tools, no beasts of burden, and no modern machinery could raise such a massive structure. Thousands of tons of earth were dug, carried in baskets, and shaped into a perfect conical form. The sheer amount of labor it required is hard to imagine, and it tells us that this wasn't just a burial site, it was a centerpiece of an entire society's spiritual and cultural life. Archaeologists believe the Adena culture thrived in the Ohio Valley from about 1000 BC to 200 AD. The people were semi-nomadic, living in small villages, farming, hunting, and gathering. But when it came to death and ceremony, they built mounds that would last millennia. Grave Creek Mound is thought to have been built in several stages over many years, perhaps even generations. A chief or a respected leader may have been buried in one layer, the mound raised over them, then another burial added, followed by more earth. In time, it became this towering monument. But what makes Grave Creek Mound mysterious isn't just its size, it's what was found inside. In the 1830s, two local men, Jesse and Abelard Tomlinson, excavated a tunnel into the mound. They discovered multiple burial chambers, some with human remains, beads, copper bracelets, and carved shells. Stories spread of unusually tall skeletons being unearthed, some said to be more than 7 feet in height. Whether these accounts were exaggerated or not, they fueled legends of a race of giants who might have built or inhabited the region long before known native cultures. In the 1830s, two local men, Jesse and Abelard Tomlinson, excavated a tunnel into the mound. They discovered multiple burial chambers, some with human remains, beads, copper bracelets, and carved shells. Stories spread of unusually tall skeletons being unearthed, some said to be more than 7 feet in height. Whether these accounts were exaggerated or not, they fueled legends of a race of giants who might have built or inhabited the region long before known native cultures. Skeptics argue the giant stories came from mismeasurements or distortions over time, but the tales refuse to die. They are repeated even today, often tied to ideas of hidden histories or suppressed archaeology. Another layer of mystery comes from the so-called Grave Creek Stone. It was reported that during excavation, a small sandstone tablet was found with strange carvings on it, lines of characters that looked like writing. Some claimed it was evidence of ancient Europeans or even Phoenicians who had made contact with the Americas long before Columbus. Scholars later examined the stone, and most concluded it was a hoax, possibly planted to stir excitement. Still, for some, the stone represents one of those unexplained threads that keep the site wrapped in legend. Walking around the mound today, you see a carefully maintained park with a circular path leading to the top. From there, you get a sweeping view of the Ohio River Valley. In the 19th century, this spot would have looked completely different. No modern buildings, just rolling hills and farmland. Standing at the top now, you can imagine how this mound would have dominated the landscape for ancient people. It wasn't just a burial, it was a signal, a landmark, maybe even a spiritual bridge between earth and sky. The Grave Creek Mound Archaeological Complex sits at the base, which includes the Delft-Nerona Museum. Inside, you find displays about the Adena people, their artifacts, and reconstructions of how the mound may have been built. This gives visitors context, but it also leaves gaps. We know the Adena built it, but we don't fully understand their religious beliefs, why they placed items with the dead, or what meanings were tied to the mound's shape and size. That uncertainty leaves room for speculation, and speculation is what fuels the sense of mystery. Not everything about the site is positive, though. The original excavation in the 1830s was done without care, destroying much of the archaeological context. The Tomlinsons, like many of their time, were treasure hunters more than scientists. Skeletons were removed, artifacts scattered into collections, and valuable information about the Adena was lost forever. Later excavations tried to correct this, but much damage was already done. There's also the reality that many Adena burial sites across the region have been bulldozed or looted, leaving Grave Creek Mound as one of the few that survives in its full form. On the positive side, preservation efforts today are serious. The mound is protected, maintained, and presented as both a historical treasure and a public park. Visitors can learn, walk, and reflect on it. Yet commercialization has touched it too. Moundsville once built a baseball park right next to the mound in the late 1800s, and in the 20th century, a highway nearly encroached. Balancing respect for an ancient sacred site with modern development is always tricky, and Grave Creek has seen its share of missteps. Personally, I find the place humbling. It's one thing to read about the Adana in books, but standing before a mound that has stood for over 2,000 years makes their presence real. At the same time, I don't lean too far into the giant skeleton stories. They may have roots in real discoveries, but exaggeration and rumor play big roles. What is undeniable is that the Adena were skilled, organized, and deeply spiritual. They didn't need outside civilizations to explain their achievements. Their own culture was remarkable enough. When you visit today, the experience can feel both inspiring and a little uneasy. Inspiring because the mound is intact, green grass rolling over its slopes, birds circling above, and families walking the paths. Uneasy because you know it is a burial site, a place where human remains once rested. For Native Americans, such sites are sacred, and there are calls for greater recognition of that fact. Some visitors may treat it just like a park, without realizing they're standing on ancient graves. That contrast between reverence and recreation creates tension in how the site is used and understood. Present-day Moundsville has built much of its identity around the mound. It draws tourists, school trips, and history enthusiasts. The Delft Nerona Museum provides a respectful and educational environment, though like many small museums, it struggles for funding and attention. The grounds are well kept with signage and walkways, but the city around it shows signs of economic hardship. Some storefronts are empty, and the once famous West Virginia Penitentiary across the street draws a different kind of tourism, ghost tours and prison history. In a way, the mound and the penitentiary sit side by side as symbols of very different human stories, one ancient and mysterious, the other grim and more recent. In the end, Grave Creek Mound remains one of those places where the known and unknown meet. We know the Adina built it, we know it was used for burials, and we know it took incredible effort. But we don't know exactly what rituals were performed, what the people believed about death and the afterlife, or why they poured so much energy into creating something that would outlast them by thousands of years. That's the mystery, and when you stand at the base or climb to the top and look out across the valley, you can feel a connection to those questions. For me, that's what makes Grave Creek worth visiting. Not to chase legends of giants or lost civilizations, but to sense the depth of human history that still lingers in the soil of West Virginia. Present situation at the site is a mix of good and bad. The mound is preserved and open to the public, with educational resources nearby. Visitors can climb to the top, enjoy the view, and learn about the Adena culture. On the downside, much of the original context was lost to careless digging long ago, and the surrounding town struggles with its own challenges, which sometimes overshadows the site. Yet the mound endures, quiet, massive, and mysterious. A reminder that long before modern West Virginia, there were people here who dreamed, worked, and built something meant to last forever. Sinks of Gandy. The Sinks of Gandy is one of those places in West Virginia that seems almost designed to stir the imagination. Tucked away in the rolling hills of Randolph County, deep in the Monongahela National Forest, it's a cave system where Gandy Creek simply vanishes into the earth. For about a mile, the creek disappears beneath a limestone ridge before re-emerging further downstream. On the surface, it looks like just another mountain stream. But then, all at once, it's gone, swallowed by a dark opening in the rocks. That vanishing act has fascinated people for centuries, and it remains one of the state's most unusual natural wonders. The name itself has an old local flavor. The Gandy comes from Uriah Gandy, an early settler who owned land nearby in the 18th century. To early farmers and travelers, this was more than just a curiosity. It was something mysterious, even unsettling. Imagine walking through the wilderness 200 years ago, hearing the rush of a creek, and then watching it sink into the earth without a trace. To people used to the predictable rhythm of rivers and streams, it would have felt otherworldly. The cave itself stretches roughly 3,000 feet, though not all of it is easy to explore. Some parts are narrow crawl spaces, while others open into wide chambers where the water echoes against the stone. The entrance is dramatic, a gaping arch about 30 feet high and 40 feet wide, big enough to invite explorers yet dark enough to send a shiver down the spine. Early accounts from the 1800s describe locals daring each other to walk inside, often without proper lights, just lanterns or torches. Some never went far, afraid of the roar of the underground water and the pitch blackness that swallowed them with each step. For many, the Sinks of Gandy became wrapped in folklore. Stories told of people who entered the cave and were never seen again, swallowed forever by the underground stream. Others claimed strange lights or sounds came from within. In the 19th century, when science and folklore blurred together, some even speculated that the water carried messages or omens, linking the cave to Native American spiritual beliefs. Though no ancient carvings or artifacts have been found directly at the Sinks, it's easy to imagine that the site would have carried symbolic meaning for earlier peoples. After all, water disappearing underground is the kind of natural phenomenon that would naturally inspire myths. But there are more down-to-earth mysteries too. Where exactly does all the water go? Hydrologists have studied the stream and mapped its underground route, but the full picture is still complex. The creek winds through chambers and passages, and while it emerges downstream, the subterranean flow isn't simple or straight. The underground geology creates multiple channels, some still unexplored. For cavers, that unknown is part of the thrill. Even today, not every corner has been fully surveyed. Exploration of the Sinks has a long history. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, it became a known destination for adventurous travelers. Some wrote about their experiences, describing wading through cold water, their lanterns reflecting on dripping limestone walls, and the constant roar of the creek beside them. These early visitors weren't professional cavers, just curious hikers willing to risk wet boots and scraped knees. Over time, more systematic exploration took place, and the cave became a documented landmark. Still, the sense of mystery never faded. Unlike many tourist caves fitted with electric lights and walkways, the Sinks remains rugged and natural. That ruggedness is both a positive and a negative today. On the one hand, the Sinks of Gandy hasn't been overdeveloped. There's no ticket booth, no concrete paths, no neon signs. It feels wild, almost unchanged from how it looked centuries ago. On the other hand, that also means it's not particularly safe for the unprepared. There are no railings, no guided tours, and the cave floor can be slippery. Flash floods are a real danger, and visitors are warned not to enter during or after heavy rains. People have gotten lost or injured trying to push too far without proper gear. It's a reminder that nature's beauty often comes with risk. Standing at the mouth of the cave, you hear the water tumbling into the darkness, echoing against the rock. The air is cool and damp, carrying the earthy smell of limestone. Step inside and the light fades quickly. The walls seem to close in, yet the sound of the creek gives you a guide. Walk far enough and you come to chambers where the ceiling opens up high above, like a cathedral of stone. It's easy to understand why people once told stories of spirits or hidden worlds underground. For me, the Sinks of Gandy feels like a crossroads between the everyday and the extraordinary. On the surface, it's just a stream going underground, something geology can explain. But standing there, you can't shake the sense that you're peering into a hidden dimension of the landscape. It's not mystical in a supernatural sense, but it carries a power, a reminder of how small we are compared to the slow, patient work of water-carving stone over millions of years. There's also an environmental angle. The cave and its underground waters are fragile ecosystems. Salamanders, bats, and rare cave-dwelling insects live here. Pollution from the surface could easily seep into the water and threaten those species. In recent decades, conservationists have pushed for more awareness of how fragile karst systems are. Protecting the Sinks isn't just about preserving a tourist curiosity. It's about safeguarding a hidden world of life that most people never see. Locals see the site with mixed feelings. Some are proud of it, happy to share stories with outsiders. Others prefer it stay low profile, worried that too much attention will bring crowds, litter, or vandalism. Graffiti has been found on some rocks, a sad reminder that not every visitor treats the place with respect. Balancing accessibility with preservation is a constant challenge. Today, if you visit, you won't find a big sign pointing the way. The Sinks of Gandy remains a somewhat hidden destination, known mostly to locals, hikers, and cavers who seek it out. There's a dirt road leading near the entrance, and a short walk brings you to the cave mouth. Some visitors wade in a short distance just to experience the cool air and hear the echoes. Others, with helmets, waterproof lights, and experience, go deeper. Whether you step in a few yards or explore the full underground passage, it leaves an impression. Personally, I think the mystery of the Sinks lies in its simplicity. It doesn't need a legend of lost treasure or monsters to be fascinating. The fact that a whole stream vanishes into a mountain and then reappears later is enough. It's a reminder that the world beneath our feet is just as complex and strange as the world we see above ground. And even though science has explained much of it, the feeling of standing at the edge of that dark opening, with the roar of water plunging into the unknown, is still powerful. The present situation at the sinks of Gandy is a mix of beauty and caution. The cave remains natural and undeveloped, offering visitors an authentic experience of West Virginia's wild landscapes. It draws cavers, hikers, and photographers looking for something raw and real. On the downside, the lack of infrastructure means risks are real. Slips, floods, and disorientation happen, and graffiti and careless visitors have left scars. Yet overall, the site endures as one of the state's purest natural mysteries, quiet and humbling, waiting for anyone brave enough to step inside and listen to the underground river carry its secrets through the dark. Mothman. In the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, there's a story that refuses to fade. It began in the mid-1960s when people started reporting encounters with a strange creature, unlike anything they had ever seen before. They described it as a tall humanoid figure with massive wings and glowing red eyes. Some said it stood nearly 7 feet tall, its wings stretching wide enough to cover a car. The creature became known as the Mothman, and over the years, it has become one of the most famous mysteries in American folklore. The first widely recognized sighting happened on November 15, 1966. Two young couples were driving near an abandoned World War II munitions site known as the TNT area, just outside of Point Pleasant. They claimed they saw a large figure with wings rise into the air and follow their car, flying at speeds near 100 miles per hour. Terrified, they sped into town and told local authorities what they had seen. That report set off a wave of panic. Over the next year, more than 100 people came forward with stories of seeing the creature, usually near the TNT area. Some described glowing eyes staring at them from the dark. Others reported being followed or even chased by it. For a small community, the impact was immediate. Newspapers spread the story, and reporters descended on Point Pleasant. The legend grew with every new sighting. Some described Mothman as a harbinger of doom, a creature that appeared as a warning before disaster. That idea gained traction when, on December 15, 1967, the Silver Bridge, which connected Point Pleasant to Ohio, collapsed during rush hour. 46 people lost their lives. After the tragedy, sightings of Mothman seemed to stop almost completely. Many in town couldn't help but connect the dots. To them, the creature hadn't been a monster at all, but a sign of the disaster to come. Skeptics offered other explanations. Some suggested the Mothman was nothing more than a large bird misidentified in the dark. The sandhill crane with its long wings and glowing eyes when caught in headlights was one possibility. Others pointed to owls, which can appear much larger and more menacing at night, especially when frightened into sudden flight. There were also those who thought mass hysteria played a role, where one story snowballed into dozens of similar accounts fueled by fear and imagination. But the fact remains, too many people from all walks of life claim to have seen something strange in Point Pleasant. The TNT area itself added fuel to the mystery. During World War II, it had been used to store explosives. After the war, the buildings and bunkers were abandoned, leaving behind a landscape of decaying structures, empty concrete domes, and overgrown woods. It was a perfect setting for eerie encounters. Locals already thought of the area as strange, even haunted, before the Mothman sightings. Strange noises, unexplained lights, and odd wildlife behavior were all part of the lore. The idea that something otherworldly could be lurking in those ruins didn't seem far-fetched to many. Over the decades, Mothman has become more than just a story of fear. It's become a cultural symbol. The town of Point Pleasant embraced the legend, turning it into a part of their identity. Today, there's a Mothman museum downtown, filled with newspaper clippings, eyewitness accounts, and memorabilia from the era. Outside, a metallic statue of the creature stands tall, wings spread, eyes fixed forward. It's a tourist attraction, but it also reflects how the town has taken ownership of its own legend. Every year, the Mothman Festival draws crowds from across the country. People come dressed in costumes, listen to lectures, and share their fascination with the mystery, yet the story still carries a haunting edge. Was Mothman real? If so, what was it? A misidentified bird, a paranormal being, or even a visitor from somewhere beyond? Some believers tie it to UFO sightings in the area during the 1960s, claiming the creature was part of a larger pattern of strange events. Others lean into the idea of Mothman as an omen, not a physical creature but a supernatural sign of tragedy. For skeptics, the legend reveals more about human psychology than about monsters, how fear spreads, how stories grow, and how communities make sense of the unknown. Standing in Point Pleasant today, you get a mix of emotions. On one hand, the town is proud of its connection to the legend. The festival and museum bring in visitors, providing an economic boost. On the other hand, you can feel how the original events, especially the Silver Bridge collapse, still cast a shadow. For families who lost loved ones that night, the story of Mothman can be painful, a reminder of tragedy tied to myth. That duality, legend and loss, curiosity and grief, makes the story heavier than just a fun cryptid tale. Visiting the TNT area itself, you find crumbling bunkers hidden in the woods, their concrete walls covered in moss and graffiti. It's an eerie place, especially in the fading light of evening. The air feels cooler, and the sound of birds or rustling leaves can play tricks on your senses. Walk through the abandoned structures, and it's easy to see how fear could turn a shadow into a monster. Yet, even knowing that, there's something unsettling about being there. You can't help but glance over your shoulder, half expecting to see glowing eyes watching you. Personally, I sit in the middle when it comes to Mothman. I don't fully buy into the idea of a supernatural being sent to warn of disasters, but I also don't think every sighting was just a bird. When that many people, over a span of months, describe the same thing, it suggests something real sparked the stories. Maybe it was a rare bird, maybe a series of coincidences, or maybe something we still don't fully understand. I don't think we'll ever get a definitive answer, and that's part of the allure. The present situation in Point Pleasant is a mix of the ordinary and the extraordinary. The Mothman Museum thrives, the annual festival draws thousands, and the statue has become a must-see stop for travelers. The TNT area, though still remote and creepy, has become a destination for thrill seekers and curious explorers. The downside is that some parts have been vandalized, and safety concerns remain. Those old bunkers weren't built to last forever, but despite the negatives, the legend endures. Mothman is no longer just a local story, it's an icon of West Virginia, a mystery that keeps people coming back, and a reminder that sometimes the unknown is what captures us most of all. Flatwoods Monster. The story of the Flatwoods Monster begins on the evening of September 12, 1952, in the small town of Flatwoods, West Virginia. It was the kind of place where people knew each other by name, and excitement was usually reserved for school football games or church picnics. But that night, something streaked across the sky and forever changed how the town would be remembered. Several local boys were playing football at the schoolyard when they saw a bright, glowing object shoot across the horizon and appear to land on a hillside nearby. Thinking it might have been a meteor, they ran to investigate, their imaginations racing with possibilities. The boys rushed to get an adult to come along, and they found Kathleen May, a local mother. She agreed to join them, bringing along her sons and a few other kids as well as the family dog. The group set off toward the hillside where the strange light seemed to settle. As they made their way up, the atmosphere became tense. The air smelled strange, like burning metal mixed with something rotten. The dog, usually brave, began barking wildly and then ran back down the hill, refusing to go further. For the people climbing that slope, that was the first sign that something wasn't right. When they finally reached the clearing, the group saw something that left them shaken for the rest of their lives. Standing near the trees was a tall figure, towering at least 10 feet high. Its head was shaped almost like a spade, with glowing red eyes that seemed to burn through the darkness, a dark metallic body with what looked like long clawed arms stretched outward, and it appeared to float rather than walk. The whole scene was bathed in a faint glow, as if the figure itself was surrounded by an otherworldly light. The witnesses later described the figure as terrifying, otherworldly, and unlike anything they had ever seen. Almost immediately, a thick mist filled the air, bringing with it a choking, sulfur-like smell that burned the eyes and throats of those nearby. Some of the children gagged, and Kathleen May herself said she felt sick to her stomach. Fear took over, and the group turned and bolted back down the hill. They didn't stop until they reached safety, where they told the townspeople what had happened. The local authorities were alerted, and the story spread quickly through the small community. Word of the encounter reached the national press within days. Reporters swarmed the quiet town, eager to hear first-hand accounts of what was now being called the Flatwoods Monster. Some painted it as a visitor from outer space, connected to the glowing object seen in the sky. Others suggested it was nothing more than mass hysteria, or a trick of the light. But the people who had been there that night remained consistent in their descriptions. To them, it was no ordinary animal, no simple misidentification. It was something strange, powerful, and frightening. Over the years, skeptics have put forward a number of theories to explain what happened. The most common explanation is that the witnesses saw a barn owl perched on a tree branch. Barn owls have large glowing eyes when caught in light, and their wings spread wide could resemble strange arms. Combined with the stress of the night, the sulfur smell from a natural source, and the haze of panic, the theory argues the group exaggerated what they saw. Another idea is that a meteor really had passed overhead, sparking the imagination of the kids and fueling a story that grew larger as it was retold. But the counter-argument is just as strong. The witnesses, especially Kathleen May, never backed down from their accounts. They described details that went beyond the size or behavior of any owl. The glowing metallic body, the floating movement, and the thick mist didn't fit with natural explanations, and the physical symptoms, burning throats, nausea, watery eyes, suggested they encountered something real that night, whether of this earth or not. As the decades passed, the Flatwoods Monster became part of West Virginia's folklore. Standing alongside the more famous Mothman, the town of Flatwoods embraced the mystery, with local businesses putting up murals and selling souvenirs to visitors. Today, you can even find a museum dedicated to the monster, filled with newspaper clippings, eyewitness accounts, and artistic depictions of the strange creature. It's clear that the story has grown beyond one strange night. It has become part of the identity of the town itself. Visiting Flatwoods today, you'll find a mix of pride and mystery surrounding the tale. On the positive side, the legend has brought tourism and a sense of uniqueness to a small community that might otherwise have faded quietly into history. Families visit each year to hear the story, buy monster-themed gifts, and take photos with large statues of the creature. Locals appreciate the attention, and many enjoy sharing the tale with curious outsiders. On the negative side, there are those who feel the story has overshadowed the real life of the town. For some older residents, the memory of reporters crowding into their small community after the event is not fond. There's also a lingering skepticism. Outsiders sometimes mock the story, treating it like a silly fairy tale. That can sting for the families who genuinely believe they experienced something unexplainable. The commercialization of the monster can also feel strange, as if a night of real fear has been turned into little more than a novelty. When I think about the Flatwoods Monster, I find myself in the middle ground. On one hand, the explanations offered by skeptics make sense. Our minds are capable of turning small details into something much larger when fear takes over. But on the other hand, the conviction of the witnesses, the physical symptoms they experienced, and the consistency of their stories make me hesitate to dismiss it outright. Something did happen on that hill in 1952, even if we don't fully understand what. Standing in Flatwoods today, you don't see glowing creatures or thick, choking mists. Instead, you see a quiet Appalachian town that carries its mystery with pride. The hillside where the encounter took place is just an ordinary stretch of land now, peaceful and unremarkable. But for those who know the story, it's impossible not to look at the trees and wonder what the group really saw that night. Was it an alien visitor, a natural phenomenon, or something stranger still? What's certain is that the Flatwoods Monster left an imprint that goes far beyond a single night. It became a story told across generations, a way for a small town in West Virginia to be remembered in the larger tapestry of American folklore. Whether you believe the creature was real or not, visiting Flatwoods today means stepping into that blend of history, fear, and imagination. And in a world where so many mysteries have been explained, there's something refreshing about a story that refuses to be neatly solved. Grafton Monster. The story of the Grafton Monster begins in June of 1964 in the small railroad town of Grafton, West Virginia. Life there was predictable, built around trains, mills, and the rhythm of everyday Appalachian living. But on one evening that summer, a local newspaper reporter named Robert Cockrell was driving home after work when he spotted something that shook him to his core. He described it as a massive, pale figure walking along the road near the Tygart River, and it was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Cockrell reported that the figure was enormous, close to 7 or 8 feet tall, and completely smooth, with no visible head where one should be. Its body was bulky and powerful, covered in what he described as pale, seal-like skin that glistened under the streetlights. It seemed solid and muscular, but strangely featureless, almost like a blank silhouette made real. The reporter was so stunned by what he saw that he stopped his car to get a better look. For a few seconds, the creature stood there silently before vanishing into the brush. The very next day, Cockrell shared his encounter with friends and coworkers, and soon the whole town was buzzing with talk of the monster. Groups of curious teenagers and locals poured into the area hoping to catch a glimpse of the strange figure. Some claimed they saw it moving near the woods. Others reported strange noises or unexplained shadows. Within days, the story grew so large that the town couldn't ignore it, and the Grafton Monster entered West Virginia folklore. Descriptions varied slightly, but most witnesses agreed on its unusual size, its pale skin, and the absence of a head. Some said its head seemed tucked low into its chest, giving it that eerie headless appearance. Others suggested that it wasn't headless at all, just so oddly built that its features weren't visible in the dark. What united all the accounts was the sense that the creature was powerful and unnatural, not something anyone expected to see on a quiet evening drive. Not everyone believed the stories. Skeptics argued that the monster was nothing more than a trick of the light or misidentified wildlife. A large bear standing awkwardly, for example, could appear headless from the right angle. Others pointed to the atmosphere of the time. Grafton was a small town in the 1960s when UFO sightings and tales of mysterious creatures were all over the news. People were primed to see the extraordinary, they argued, even if the truth was far more ordinary. Still, there were strange details that made the explanations less satisfying. Multiple witnesses reported that the creature moved smoothly and quietly, almost gliding. It left behind no clear tracks, but people swore they saw it slipping into the trees or crossing fields. Some even linked the Grafton Monster to broader stories of strange beings seen across Appalachia, from Mothman in Point Pleasant to Bigfoot-like creatures in the deep woods. To them, this was another puzzle piece in a region filled with strange encounters. The story didn't just vanish after that summer. For decades, people in and around Grafton would occasionally bring it up. Hunters, fishermen, and hikers in the hills sometimes claimed they saw a massive, pale figure watching them from a distance. Nothing ever matched the intensity of that first wave of sightings in 1964, but the legend stuck, handed down through local families and kept alive by curious visitors. In recent years, the Grafton Monster has gained new attention thanks to paranormal investigators and television shows that love to explore local legends. It's often presented as a cryptid, standing alongside Bigfoot or the Flatwoods Monster as one of West Virginia's homegrown mysteries. Unlike some legends, though, this one has an oddly specific origin, the account of a respected newspaper reporter whose story was detailed and consistent. That's part of what makes the Grafton Monster stand out. Visiting Grafton today, you won't see the monster strolling down the road by the river. What you will find is a town that's proud of its strange piece of folklore. Murals, art, and even small community events celebrate the legend, turning it into a source of identity. That's the positive side of the story. It's brought people together, given the town a unique place in West Virginia's folklore, and drawn curious tourists who might otherwise never visit. On the other hand, there are negatives too. Some locals feel the legend paints their town in a strange light, making it the butt of jokes. There's also the frustration that the story has never been resolved. For believers, it's unsettling to think something unexplained might still be out there in the hills. For skeptics, it's frustrating to see what they consider a misunderstanding blown into a decades-long legend. The mystery remains unsolved, and that leaves room for doubt, debate, and even ridicule. Thinking about the Grafton Monster, I find myself sitting in the middle. It's easy to dismiss it as a mix of imagination, fear, and a glimpse of an animal out of place. But there's something about Cockrell's story that doesn't quite fade. He wasn't a kid trying to start a rumor. He was a reporter, someone trained to observe and describe. His words have a matter-of-fact tone that makes the whole encounter harder to brush off completely. Standing by the Tygart River today, the area feels peaceful, quiet, and very ordinary. The trees sway, the water flows steadily, and there's no sign of anything monstrous. But when the sun goes down and the hills grow dark, it's not hard to imagine how unsettling it would be to see a massive, pale figure step out of the shadows. Maybe it was a bear. Maybe it was something else. Either way, the story has lived far longer than most explanations, and that in itself says something. The present-day situation in Grafton is that the monster has become more of a cultural symbol than a genuine fear. People come for the story, to walk the same road, and to hear locals retell what happened in 1964. It gives the town a unique identity and keeps its folklore alive. At the same time, the truth remains uncertain. No one has ever proven or disproven what Cockrell saw. For some, that's frustrating. For others, it's exactly what makes the legend special.